Good day, ladies and gentlemen of the 7 realms of House of the Dragon, or should I call it Hot D, which is the best abbreviation I've ever heard on Earth. Hot D. You are listening to the Two Maesters. It's myself, Morgan, and my wonderful co-host, Josh. How you doing, Josh?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good, thanks. It feels like I'm in Dawn at the moment, especially with the heat, the sand, and the sun.
Yeah, I wonder where Daemon got his inspiration from.
Yeah.
How's your week been going?
Good, thanks. One thing, the nice things being out here is that the weather's literally the same, like every single day. It's like 40-something degrees, sunshine. It's like, okay, I could kind of get used to this, but then you're like, when people like yourself and then also like family and friends back in London are like, oh, the temperature is 25, oh, it's raining, oh, it's actually sunny today, it was sunny and then rain. I'm like, I do miss it, but then I also don't miss it, because then I can fully plan my day and be like, oh, it's going to be 40 something and sunny, so I can just plan for at least for like 2 weeks and know that, okay, then the weather will be the same, I'll be fine.
So there'll be no surprises, basically. Yeah. And look, this is what happens when you have bad weather in the UK. It fluctuates so much. I've got a cold. I sound super posh. I sound like Gwaine Hightower from House of the Dragon. That's Alicent's brother, for all those who are trying to work out who the hell I was just talking about. So anyway, you folks have tuned in to the final wrap-up episode of our whole series overview saga. So we started out talking about House of the Dragon, The Boys Season 4, and The Acolyte, or shall I say The Shitterlight, in one episode. And then the second episode we spoke about the wrap-up of The Boys Season 4 and The Acolyte Season 1. But now we have finished House of the Dragon. We had the finale yesterday, roundabouts in the UK. I don't know when you watched it in Saudi. Yeah, when does it actually come out in Saudi? Because I guess you got to use Saudi HBO or whatever.
Came out on Monday.
Monday, okay. I forget that your time zone might be completely very different to ours. So we're going to go through episodes 5 to 8 and give our sort of critical analysis on the finale of the series and how we feel this series went. So let's get stuck right in with episode 5. So in this episode, it's in the aftermath of Rook's rest. So you got Corlys, Rhaenyra, and Baelor mourning Rhaenys death, the Queen of Everos. And then you got, on the green side, they're definitely not mourning. They're parading Meleys the dragon's head through King's Landing in front of the starving small folk. And as you know, Aegon has survived, but is comatose and severely burned, looking pretty bloody awful. And Kristen Cole were folds telling Alicent what truly happened in the battle. All whilst this is happening, you've got Daemon still tripping balls in Harrenhal. And I've got to say, I'm loving this. You know, you're getting a real insight into some of the issues with his psyche, you know, his bad boy personality and his relationship with his brother, but also his relationship with his mum. Although this was definitely a fucked up, not real thing. I mean, in this dream, he was having incest with his mum, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, intense, very intense. It's like the incest of each season, each variation of Game of Thrones, and each season gets more intense. Before it's just brother and sister, then like cousins, and now it's like mums and dads, and Jesus Christ.
Let's not forget earlier in season 1 it was uncle and niece.
Yeah. Oh yeah, true. Yeah. I love all the family tree memes that have come out. Like there's a picture of like, I don't know, Jaceres, the girl you're married to, and it's like Baelor, your half sister, and it's also like Baelor, and then like your mum. It's like so many of the same people. It's just like, God damn it. And then the wedding between Rhaenyra and what was his name? What was Rhaenyra's first husband from the Velaryon family?
Corus Velarion's son. Yes, what was his name again?
Wow, he's such a side note now that he's gone. But I saw a great meme, like when you're flirting with your uncle at your wedding to your half brother. Yeah, fair enough when you put it like that. Yeah. So what else sort of goes on? So Alicent gets sort of rebuffed by the Green Council. They reject her bid to become regent, and they decide to elect Aemond because he is male, and they want a dragon rider on the throne. And Aemond you really see the sort of coldness of Aemond here, especially when he's in power. Like, he really doesn't accept any love from his mum. He doesn't see as useful. He's very cold and calculating. He closes the gates of King's Landing, which any food coming in is just going to be even lesser for the small folk. What do you think of how Aemon's coming across so far as the regent?
I think for Aemon, I think he's who Daemon wants to be. And so Daemon puts on this Aemon persona, but as we're now seeing him in Harrenhal, he realizes that actually that isn't who he is. And I think that's why his brother Viserys was kept on giving him chances, because he was like, this isn't who you are. I know who you are, Daemon, and you're not this guy. You're putting on this persona to try and make yourself feel better, maybe because he feels disadvantaged because he's the second son, and the fact that he doesn't get a lot of, I think he didn't have any land, actually. And a lot of the land that he got was from his wife that he ended up killing in season 1. Yeah. And the fact that, and I think with Aemond, I think the issue with Aemond, I believe, is that you can kind of see the characteristics of the three, within Alicent's 3 children, you can see the characteristics that really are the downfall and brought the downfall of the Targaryens. You've got the snot-nosed brat who couldn't care less.
Yeah, Aegon
has no form of wisdom whatsoever.
Yeah.
You then have Aemon, who's the cold, calculating killer who has no empathy whatsoever. And then you have also their sister, who's literally spaced out and is really there.
She's okay, to be fair. She just doesn't want to be involved in anything. She just wants to dream and help.
I can't blame her. I can't blame her because, you also, I think, you realize, especially as the show gets, you move in from the end of season 1 into the beginning and the midpoint of season 2, and it's they're killing their family, literally. Rhaenyra is their half sister.
Yeah,
and that literally they're killing their nephews and nieces and cousins and half siblings. And I think what Eamon did was clever. I think he closed the gates to prevent any form of spies coming in. And also, it could be paranoia, prevent any form of assassins sneaking in to try and kill him, especially after the assassination in episode 1.
Yeah, that's true. I think Aemond, I love his character, but I think in this there needs to be more exploration of him a little bit. Where has he learned all this stuff from? Obviously his brother Aegon was a lazy snob who just wanted to hump everything and drink and just didn't spend the time even learning Valyrian, which you saw in the last episode. Doesn't speak to his dragon in Valyrian. Maybe, Daemon has a inferiority complex. That's the way he acts like a big man and is the way he is. But maybe Aemond does as well. The issue is it's not quite explored as much. You see him he's got with that whore he's not even having sex with her. He's just there getting stroked on the head. I wish we could see a bit more of that. I thought he might have a softer, tender side to him, but when he becomes the regent, he is cold as fuck. Even to his own mum as well. Yeah. I've got to say, what was Alicent expecting as well? So this the side I've picked that doesn't want a female queen is going to accept a female queen regent. Like, come on, Alison.
Yeah. And also, I think she's also starting to realize that what type of mum she was. Like, her two sons are literally monsters in differing degree who shouldn't be anywhere near the throne whatsoever.
Yep.
And I think she's starting to like realize, like, I've literally caused this huge war that I'm now no longer a part of, and I've now been sidelined.
Yeah.
So from being like the main person for the Greens, the one that would galvanize the Greens and get their support and was the part of the strategy, was the person who was directing her sons on what to do, is now someone who's now been fully sidelined. And to your point, I agree. Like, what did she expect? One, she's not a Targaryen. Two, she's also, you picked the side and basically saying that Aegon should be king because he's male. So therefore, how would they accept like a female regent? And also the fact that she doesn't have a dragon either.
Yeah,
literally is the nuclear weapon of the Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire universe. It's like Aemond has a dragon. Like, if we tell him no, what are you going to do, Alison? If we say you're not the regent, but if we say that Aemond's not the regent, we know what he's going to do.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to kick your ass. But I guess, because does everyone who sits on a throne have to be a dragon rider? Because was Viserys a dragon rider?
He could have been, but I think he chose not to. I think for his point, I think the more and more you watch the season, you then see that, I know in the books that he's seen like as a hapless king who couldn't choose between one or the other and was pretty useless. But I think you kind of see in the series that actually, out of all the monarchs, he might have been one of the best, or the ones who are vying for the throne. Because I think one thing that he did was he didn't try to distance himself from the people, which is something that Daemon is constantly talking about in season 1, and you see it in season 2.
And Aemond as well. Aemond is very distant from the common people. Yeah.
Like, we're Targaryens, that we're better than them, we're better than everybody. And you see it like in episode 4, when he's like, yeah, I couldn't give a damn about the troops that my dragon just squashed and just tore and the people I just obliterated. I'm here to, and the fact is, he didn't even use his dragon strategically either. It was as if he was like, there's another dragon rider, I must take her out at all costs.
Yeah.
Instead of actually being strategic. And it also felt like when Aegon was about to fight, he was like, Aegon's about to take my glory, so now I must rush in and...
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, Aemond, I love that because Aemond had a plan. So did Kristen Cole. It seemed to be working out, and then fucking drunk ass Aegon comes flying in, like drunk driving, just like, wow, I'm sorry, it sounds like Leroy Jenkins, and screws everything up. That's episode 4. We can't talk about episode 4 anymore. So other stuff, you see a bit of the Vale and the Eyrie in this. So you meet Jane Arryn, who's like sort of a relative of the Targaryens, I think. Like, I think she's got some Targaryen blood in her. She wanted like a proper dragon, but she gets given some hatchlings. But on her way to the Eyrie, Rhaenyra discovers that there might have been a wild dragon in that part in the Vale, which is part of the books. It's cool, but it's kind of spoilers for later episode. But there seems to be a lack of a. It could still happen in season 3, but there's a character called Nettles who actually tames that dragon called Sheepstealer, the wild dragon. So I feel like Rhaenyra might be a combination character coming up. But I really hope not, because that character Nettles actually becomes another one of Daemon's lovers. So if that's the case, that's his own daughter. That's his own daughter. So fingers crossed that's not the case, because, man, I can't take this much incest. Don't know about you.
Yeah. it's kind of like the boys, like with the shock factor of they always want to keep you shocked and have specific scenes to then.
But it's not shocking anymore. In House of the Dragon, they're kind of just like, so what? They'll, it's like not really considered at all, is it?
But I think what was shocking was when he killed his wife and the way he did it in season 1. Because like the incest wasn't shocking, but the way he killed his wife, I think, was the thing that was really shocking.
I mean, can you really be shocked by any of Daemon's actions?
That is true, yeah.
Exactly.
Especially after the first episode, the first episode.
Yeah, damn right, exactly. So what else happens? Well, you see Rhaenyra sort of engaging in subterfuge and espionage at the behest of Lady Mysaria, because it seems like the Blacks are in a bad position in this series, though, especially after Rook's rest. They've just lost a dragon. So although the Greens lost a dragon, Vhagar is unstoppable, it seems, and the Blacks have no ground army. And you can see Rhaenyra being frustrated because she is, she's a dragon rider. She should be able to support and lead men into battle. But, this is what happens with Aegon and what happened in real life as well. It's very motivating as a ruler to lead your troops in battle. But as soon as you die, your cause kind of falls with you, especially if it's civil unrest or, civil war, because everyone's fighting for your name. As soon as you die, they're like, well, okay, there's no one else to fight for on this side. So you see that come out a bit more. What else? See Daemon sort of interacting with the River Lords. He gets to the Blackwoods to basically uses their mutual animosity with the Brackens, who have declared for the Greens. And he tells the Blackwoods, go ahead, go ravage their asses, like pillage and plunder. And Alice Rivers, who I love Alice Rivers. Her accent as well just makes her sound super like sharp, just criticizing Daemon's ruthlessness, and claims that the River Lords will denounce his atrocities, which they do, and so bites him in the ass big time. I like that. I like seeing that dynamic, that Daemon's ruthlessness he shows he might be like a hot boy that all the girls love and stuff, and he doesn't take crap from anyone, but he actually isn't that good at political gaming.
I also think it's also a sign you do see in this episode, as if like you first see like the common folk are kind of like tired of the war, and they're kind of like aghast of the brutality that the Targaryens are willing to commit. And then you then start to see like the nobility as well, to start to be like, okay, then this is a way too far. And I think one of the things that for those who have read the books, and also for those who haven't, this is like, I believe George R. R. Martin wrote it like in his own history about the A Song of Ice and Fire, that like this war was like the point where the populace in Westeros were like, F the dragons, F those Targaryens,
they're
weirdos. And they aren't gods, and also that they're not benevolent. And then I think they also realize that they're more sick and twisted than we are. And I think that's what kind of like helped. I think they even said it. I think George R. R. Martin said it. That kind of helped Robert Baratheon's rebellion, was that the populace had this was the catalyst, and then just kept on getting worse and worse and worse and worse with each generation of Targaryen, to the point where the populace were like, yeah, we're tired of these weirdos.
Yeah. Well, all it takes is a mad king, and then people are like, okay, enough is enough. But I guess, when you dealt with years of their scandal, and when the dragons go as well, the deterrent against rising up goes as well. So, and I love it how they say, when they're parading Melly's head through King's Landing, it doesn't go down well. The small folk, they see it as a bad omen. So there's so much symbology. And remember, this is House of the Dragon. And, there's some great things about this series. There's some bad things about the series. But one thing I think they did fantastically is just how they present the dragons in this. Their size, the CGI, and, like, the sheer terror of them as well, which we'll catch up on in the next episodes. So the episode ends with Rhaenyra discussing with Jace, their dragon situation, how they've got all these spare dragons but no riders, especially since, they just lost one. And Jace suggests, there's this idea of the Targaryen seed or Valyrian seed. So, the Targaryens are hot stuff, super blonde hair, in power. And a lot of small folk end up getting jiggy with them. And that creates a lot of bastards or sometimes actually through noble marriage. So Lady Jane Arryn is somewhere, Targaryen. So you have all these potential riders out there. The Dragonseed, that's what it's called, which sounds wrong because it sounds like the dragons are mating with people. That sets a good precedent for the next episode. So, episode 6. This one starts off quite funny because I love the Lannister brothersness. So you got Jason Lannister, who's the heir of Casterly Rock. And then you've got, Tyland Lannister, who is his twin brother, who is just the master of coin on the small council. So this episode starts off with Jason Lannister leading his army to the Golden Tooth and meeting with, what's the name of the house? Lord Lefford. And Lord Lefford's like, I have 800 men-at-arms ready. And then Jason Lannister, being such a show-off snob, just says, well, I bring 1,000 knights of my own and 7 times as many men-at-arms. He also brings a lion in a cage with his army. I love the Lannisters in this. They're more comical than serious, but, I like it. And so, what else goes on? You've got Sir Steffan Darklyn, who honorably takes Rhaenyra's ask to try and ride one of the dragons. And boy, I loved how that turned out. You had a bit of, you weren't quite expecting the way they present it. You think it's going to go okay. But man, when it goes wrong, it goes so wrong and it's dreadful. You see Sir Steffan Darklyn get burned, but also one of the dragon keepers. And the dragon keeper, whilst they're burning alive, slits their own throat. And you're just you get this good sense of dread there. It's very cool. It's this tough job trying to tame a dragon. You remember that the movie How to Train a Dragon?
How to Train a Dragon, yeah.
Yeah, this is the realistic version. If you were asked to, say if you were a Dragonseed and you were asked to give it a go with one of the dragons, would you do it?
Hell no.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to find out. I do love in this episode, Sea Smoke finds Alan. Is it Alan of Hull? Or because there's 2 of them and I get their names mixed up. Yeah, Alan of Hull. That's the better way to become a dragon rider. Not trying to seek them out, let them seek you out.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty crazy stuff. So then you've got bloody hilarious scene where you got Aemond again. He is in charge. He's sort of ordering out the High Council. And you see Larry's Clubfoot try and sneakily suggest, there's the matter of appointing a hand to the king. And Aemond's like, oh yes, of course. Well, Lord Larry's Clubfoot, I give that responsibility to you. And Lord Larry Clubfoot's trying to act all sly and's like, oh, I'd never have expected such responsibility. And then Aemond just out the blue goes, no, not you, you toad. Otto Hightower, go tell him it's his responsibility. Loved watching that. Loved it. He is entertaining, Aemond, I will say that. Now, what else have we got that goes on in this episode? Suddenly, Daemon, Alicent has a another son called Daemon, which I know I've read the Fire and Blood books, but he is actually a thing, Daemon the Daring. But there's just too many characters, and they spend a lot of time with characters that you don't spend a lot of time with in the book. Whereas characters you do spend some time with in the book, they don't really flesh out. So it's like, maybe there's just too many characters and the focus of the writers is in the wrong place. Is there any sort of stuff you see so far out of these episodes that's sort of starting to get you like a bit worried about how the show's going, or any issues you're finding?
I think kind of like the pace, I think, is the main thing. Because I thought like when like season 2 started, like it would have been like full on all out war. But it kind of feels like they're trying to like pace the series so that the actual latter parts of the book, and also the fact that, isn't it like a few chapters in the actual book, the actual 300-year history book that George R. Martin wrote? So it kind of feels like they're trying to like flesh it out as much as possible. And I think they did say that they are having it's going to be for 4 seasons. And that's how much they've renewed it for 4 seasons. Then the question for me is that, are they then going to do stuff, for example, talk about characters who aren't really mentioned in the books? And to your point, as they have so many characters, are they then going to have it that they'll calculate and say, okay, then this episode, this person dies, this episode, this person dies, or have it that, it's going to be like 8 episodes in a row, we're going to be losing characters left, right, and center?
Yeah, it could be a case. It could be that season 3, a lot of people are going to die. We should, when we talk about the last episode, there'll definitely be a lot of stuff we can talk about. But I definitely know some characters I'd like killed off. No offense to them, but yeah, we'll see. There are too many, and I think they've got a lot of action and beheadings to make up for. So we also, not just hear about Daemon, but we also start to see the small folk rise up. So, the espionage campaign that Lady Mazzara is leading for Rhaenyra, they spread rumors that the royals are regularly feasting while the small folk starve. And this is a bit I like about the series, seeing how the small folk interact with, things that are going on. It's not just, you're seeing the corridors of power. All times you're seeing Ulf, who will eventually become one of the Dragon Riders, and what's the hammer guy called? He is called... it'll come back to me. But you see, them hearing this stuff in the street, in pubs. I love hearing the small folk talk in this. They just sound so common. And I sound so posh right now because I've got a cold. Yeah, and the scene with the boats going across the water and stuff was cool, but I think realistically, if you're starving and you spot some boats laden with food coming across a sea, you're probably just going to hoard it all and try and keep that from the rest of the people of King's Landing, if that makes sense. Like you see the hammer, whatever he's called, people are like, there's food, let's go get it. But it's like, if I was one of those people who spotted one of those boats, I'd keep that so quiet.
But also, I would also think, is this some kind of trap as well? So I'd be like, yeah, you go first. I'll wait here. Just bring the food over. Because then it could also be like a trap. It could be poisoned. It could be disease to try and like bring disease to King's Landing. Yeah. It could be a trap. A dragon could pop out of somewhere, anywhere. So especially like during a war period, I'll be like, no one really gives away free food during war.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I would have been really skeptical.
Exactly, it's a trick, but this is it. I mean, people are stupid because especially when you're hungry as well, you'll love who gives you food, and this is what Aemond, I think, talks about even this episode, the episode before. Larry's the clubfoot's trying to caution him. The people are starving. We can fight Rhaenyra, but the enemy within is more insidious. And he's like, but why are we the target of the small folks' anger? It's Rhaenyra who's let ordered a blockade on the gullet, and therefore that's why King's Landing is starving. But the people, blame the king because they see the king must ensure their well-being. It's interesting. I find that realistic, but also, frustrating because really it is actually Rhaenyra to blame, But that's it for you.
Historians said it that with absolute monarchies, what happens is if something goes wrong, it's then absolutely your fault.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's the thing that's happening with Aemon is that because he's now the regent, because Aegon is in his injured state, is that you're in charge, so you need to sort it out. Like, we couldn't care less if it's the White Walkers out there. You're in charge. We put you in charge of our well-being. And I think that's the dangerous side as well when it comes to populace, is that if you then constantly tell them that I'm in charge for your own benefit and your own good, and that's why you do as I say, because I'm perfect for you, and I'll do whatever I can, well, I'll do everything in my power to make you safe. When they're in a situation where they're unsafe, they're like, well,
that was your
charge. That was your fault. And the fact that we've allowed you, and I think that's another thing people forget, is that the populace allow themselves to be ruled. It's not the other way around. People always think that it's the king's authority that enables him to rule. And it's either the king's beaten the populace into submission. So they said, you know what, we've had enough, or it's through their own gratitude. But I think that's the thing that I don't think Aemon realizes, is that the populace are allowing you to rule, and they outnumber you. And when shit hits the fan, they will point directly to you because you are in charge. It's like the same way that if you're on a ship and the ship starts to sink, everyone goes to the captain.
The captain, yeah. The mutiny.
But then if there's a situation where there's a bit of upheaval, the captain's like, I'm the captain, you all have to listen to me, I'm an authority, you do this, you do that. And the captain will have special quarters, he'll get more food, more rations. Exactly. But then when shit hits the fan, he must be prepared to deal with the situation, or the people will be like, we've given you all of this and you can't help us, so we'll go find someone else.
And I guess that's another element to it, because, with absolute power comes absolute responsibility. And on top of that, people know you're eating better than them as well, which is what is going on in House of the Dragon. They're saying the royals are feasting, and this is what Lady Mysaria is using her pawns to spread around in King's Landing. And eventually, what erupts, surprise, surprise, an uprising. And this reminded me a lot of just what you see in Game of Thrones, actually, with Joffrey getting poo thrown at his face. I love the line in this. It's the Queen of Fishes, and they throw a fish at Alicent, and it gets splattered on her face. Like, pretty cool scene, seeing stuff erupt. And like, one thing you'll see in the books as well, which will probably come out in season 3, is so there's one member of the public, or I should say commoner, who grabs Alicent by the arm, and one of the Kingsguard chops his arm off. I've seen some fan theories online that will be a character called the Shepherd, who is basically like the High Sparrow in Game of Thrones, that for House of the Dragon. So you do see some parallels. I think like a thing about watching House of the Dragon is seeing some of the parallels with Game of Thrones. Maybe that's lazy writing, or like duplicate, good but duplicated writing, or maybe it's a deliberate nostalgia parallel thing they're putting out there. But we shall see more. So on to episode 7. So in this episode, it starts with Rhaenyra confronting Adam of Hull, who's Seasmoke's new rider, and he pledges fealty to her. Love that scene, when you've got the wide angle, you've got Syrax and Rhaenyra on one side, Seasmoke and Adam on one side, and it looks like the dragons are talking to each other. You must have seen some memes where people have like photoshopped speech bubbles above them, like, hey, bruh, love you, man. Or like, my name is Jeff. Like, there's so many out there. I love the internet for popular TV shows. What else?
If I was Adam, like, why would you rush into war when you've just got a dragon? You've just got a nuclear weapon, and now you're like, you know what? I'm gonna go straight to the front lines with this weapon. Like, so many people would have been like, I'm going to Bravos with this. Well, I'm going to go somewhere else in Essos and then build up my own little kingdom there, and then maybe take over like a pirate's den and then be in charge there. But he's like, you know what? I'll do the honourable thing and then go straight into battle.
Why does he? Because I know, he's got his brother. So Alan and Adam, he's got his brother who's very reluctant to, get anything from Corlys Velaryon or anyone. He's not going to act on his birthright, even though they're bastards. But yeah, what is Adam's motivation? I guess he's, accepting of whatever comes to raise his station. But why particularly is he loyal to Rhaenyra? We'll have to see, because he's not, well, I guess he is lowborn, but he knows his place in society. He's a soldier or a seaman or a shipwright, whatever you'd call it, whilst Ulf is just a bloody tavern drunk. Like, he's a comedic character, but he's an arsehole, honestly. And he was one of the worst people that the dragons eventually bond with in the next episode. Or was it in this episode, actually? So what else happens? Rhaenyra, who's in the area, just randomly somehow runs away from, guards and knights who are supposed to be escorting her to the sea to take her to Essos in safety. She also abandons her duty to look after Rhaenyra's young children. Like, hello? What the fuck? Not cool. Mysaria tells Rhaenyra to search for Targaryen dragon seeds in King's Landing, as there's so many potential dragon riders among the whores, the common folk, the blacksmiths. So, Hugh the Hammer, for example, he actually seems like a decent one. Very straightforward, loyal, and big and muscly. Then also you got Ulf, and then you got like people who are just like had like their mum was a whore, and they had an affair with a one of the Targaryens, and you find out Hugh the Hammer, that was the case. His father was likely to be, well, Daemon and Viserys' father. Who was it? Oh no, it wasn't Viserys, because they're a different branch of the family, weren't they? But anyway, you get the idea. One thing I realized we didn't catch up on in the last episode is the kissy between Lady Mysaria and Rhaenyra. Apparently that was unscripted, but there's so many memes all over the internet, because I think a lot of thirsty boys out there are like, damn, this is what we've been waiting for. Oh dear. You can see why some people are loyal to the blacks versus the greens. So what else do we have going on? The new Lord Paramount of the Riverlands, Oscar Tully, offers Daemon allegiance, but denounces nefarious behavior. This was cool because, he's quite clearly a young'un, and Daemon is a very intimidating, imposing character. But I loved that whole chat and discussion amongst the Riverlords and with the Brackens and the Blackwoods there, that Daemon finally recognizes that he needs to, change tack here, and says, okay, cool, I'll behead him, and just does it. And I love that camera angle of just Daemon's face just after he's done the beheading. He's such a great character that steals the show, that, this whole Harrenhal thing, he hasn't really done much at all.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw it, but memes about his dragon and Caraxes just chilling all season, just like, come on, man, Daemon, let's go. Pretty cool. Pretty cool episode. Is there anything in this episode? Go on.
I was just going to say that also, to just bring up like the cursed aspect of like Harrenhal.
Yeah.
Set up by Harren the Black, who was from Pike, is it, where the Greyjoys are?
Yeah, he was an Iron Islander. Yeah.
He was an Iron Islander. and I've forgotten. Because I know the Greyjoys became in charge of the Iron Islands after Harren the Black died. So I've forgotten what his family name was, but what happened was that he refused to bend the knee to Aegon the Conqueror, and he basically said, "My walls are perfect. This fortress is impregnable." And he'd actually taken large swaths of land from the River Lords, from the Storm Lords, and been able to build his own empire. So then what happened? Aegon basically got his dragons and also his two sisters. They basically just burnt it to a crisp. They burnt it so much that they bleached the castle. The actual stone started to melt.
Melted. Yeah. And this is why they think it's haunted, yeah. But then I actually like Alice Rivers' explanation of why Daemon's having weird dreams. Because, for example, his bed frame's made out of weirwood from one of the old trees, the weirwood trees that's supposed to represent the old gods. So they have done Harrenhal really well. Here's a question for you. If you had to leave a review on TripAdvisor or Airbnb for Harrenhal, what would you say?
I would say previous occupants are unwilling to leave. Beds being made out of weird materials. I believe there's a gas leak because a lot of hallucinogenics. People hallucinating.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's also the curse as well. Like people who, the people that end up. A lot of people seek Harrenhal, but when they get it, something horrible happens to them. So you look what happens to most of the Strongs, except for obviously Larry's Clubfoot, who actually organised a bit of that, and the Castellan. I can't remember his name, but he's also a Strong.
Even like Game of Thrones. Thinking back to it, who had Harrenhal before? So in the TV show, I remember that the Lannisters took it from the previous owner, and they literally threw him to the previous owner to a bear. Then after Tywin Lannister then leaves, then Arya basically supports the Boltons to enable them to then come and take over Harrenhal.
Yeah.
They then eventually leave. But then if you think about it, Roose Bolton gets killed by his son.
Yeah.
So Tywin Lannister then gets killed by his son.
Exactly. Anyone who owns Harrenhal.
You can kind of say, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, also, do you remember Baelish? He becomes the Lord of Harrenhal at one point, but he actually says it. Why would I want an old haunted castle everyone who owns it dies? But in this one, everyone wants it in House of the Dragon.
Yeah, because I think the way it's situated is like on kind of like, with the phrase, they literally are the gateway to the north and also the gateway to the south with the twins. I think for the Riverlands, it's such a situated place that it might be the place where the lands of the Tullys and I think also the Stormlands, and I think it might even connect to I think it's the Riverlands and the Stormlands, and also the Eyrie, where the Arryn's lands all meet. So it's like a strategic point if you want to then cut off like the northern half of Westeros from the southern half.
Yeah, so it might not necessarily be, actually having the greatest castle in the Seven Kingdoms, but more having their most strategic location, as you say, which wins wars, maybe. So perhaps that's what Daemon was thinking. But everyone seems to have a hard-on for Harrenhal in this for some reason. And speaking of Daemon, do you remember his vision in this episode with Viserys?
Yeah.
What did you think of that vision?
I think it was good, and it also relayed the point that he is kind of like putting on this bad boy act, and that his brother could always see through it. And that's why he constantly in season 1 was trying to find ways to support his brother, to help his brother, especially like when they were trying to take out the Triarchy and the crab feeder in season 1, and then he sends in the troops, and the fact that the guy who delivers the message almost gets beaten to death by Daemon, just because it's like, you know what, how dare my brother offer me help? in a struggling battle, but it did actually galvanize him to then win the war. But I think it's actually starting to reveal like who he actually is, and I think you also see like his character development, because I think if he stayed as that brooding character who's basically an asshole, I don't think he'd be able to help out Princess Rhaenyra at all. Well,
Yeah,
Queen Rhaenyra now. Yeah.
that's true. But his intentions do come out that he's with Rhaenyra for means to an end, that he will become king, actually king, and he keeps trying to get everyone, say even the Castellan of Harrenhal, is like, don't call me King Regent or King. Was it? What do you call it? And King Consort. Call me King. Your Grace is the correct terminology. And boy, you would not want to get that wrong in the company of him when he's holding a sword. But
yes.
I get your point, and I did love all the visions that Daemon has, apart from the one where he's banging his mum. That was fucked. But with this one with Viserys, it was so cool to see Paddy Constantine back again. But also, he's in the old crusty state, the mask, and he says, "You always wanted this crown, but why? I told you many a time that this crown destroys everyone it touches. Look what it's done to me." And that's something that's so good about seeing season 1 with what happens with King Viserys and just how he deteriorates. And then also look at Aegon. I mean, that happened in one session as opposed to Viserys over time. But, wearing the crown isn't all it's cracked up to be. You can even see Rhaenyra can't really do what she wants. She can't really fight the way she wants, and she has a lot of moral convictions about getting lots of people killed. So it's really not that great being the king or queen of Westeros, or even in real life, But I think that vision really helped sort of bring that out of the woodwork. What else goes on? Jace has an argument with Rhaenyra because bringing bastard dragon riders could sort of challenge the Targaryen's power and threaten his own succession due to his own illegitimate birth, which I thought was great because you never actually hear the strong boys, well, strong boy now, unfortunately, actually talk to their mother about it. It's just kind of hushed away. So I was actually glad to see this scene. And, when you see Ulf the White acting the way he is, then, you're like, don't bring commoners into the royal household and let them be dragon riders.
Yeah.
So,
and funny enough, the War of the Tenpenny Kings, or was it the Blackfire Rebellion? It's the likelihood that could be the later series of House of the Dragon, and the fact that is part of what Jace is talking about now actually does happen later on within like the whole Westeros and the whole universe. The fact that for fans who don't know, basically one of the kings, one of the Targaryens, to be a right utter bastard to his children, his actual legitimate children, said every child that he bastard has an equal. He legitimized them and gave them an equal right to the throne, and literally caused chaos.
Horrible thing to do.
Caused chaos.
Exactly.
He's like, oh, son, you thought you'd get the throne? Like a full-on like episode of Succession. Like, yeah, instead of giving it to. I'm going to give my shares to everyone and not just you. And then you have to battle it out with everybody else and buy portions of the company back. He was like, yeah, screw you, son. You're not going to get this crown. You all have equal.
Exactly. It's like people are so mean to bastards in Westeros, and then this one Targaryen king kind of gives them an equal standing, and look what happens. A war.
Yeah.
There's no winning. So I think the coolest thing in this episode, and possibly the coolest thing in this series, is when, Rhaenyra finally brings in all the Dragonseed to Dragonstone. They somehow get smuggled out of King's Landing, somehow, despite the gates and ports being closed, somehow. They arrive at Dragonstone, and you have that scene where Vermithor, who is, Jacaerys, the king before Viserys, dragon, the Bronze Fury, looking absolutely intimidating. And there's that great angle, when Rhaenyra's giving the speech to the Dragonseed and he's just right behind her, it's very like great. The CGI is good. It looks very intimidating. And again, this is what they do well in this series. The dragons, the dragons, House of the Dragon. I love this. I love this scene, but what did you think of it? It's not all about me.
I loved it as well. And I think you also kind of feel like that Rhaenyra might also be in the wrong. Because it's kind of like, imagine like in The Boys, they want to take down Vought, and they have, let's say, they have, what's the injection called again?
Compound V.
Compound V, and are like, we found people who their DNA should match with Compound V. Let's kind of like inject them, so now we can have this huge army to bring down Vought and Homelander. And then it's like hit and miss because people can react to it wrongly. And she's kind of like doing that, especially with the fact that these are volatile animals, well, technically monsters, that if they then don't really choose you, they can literally just burn you to a crisp. So some people were just saying online, like literally she's kind of like she's gambling with their lives as well.
Yeah, she is.
And I think they're also saying it was kind of showing like she was kind of like getting rid of her preservations, being like, you know what, I'm going to win this the right way. It's like, no, I'm going to try and this is the beginning of her saying, I'll use any advantage I can get to then win this war.
Yeah, it's a good transition to see because she's still trying to, how they marketed this season of House of Dragons is, which side are you on, Team Green or Team Black? And really, it's a lot of criticism has said it's basically Team Black are the good ones in this. Like, how could you be Team Green there? They're sexist. Aegon's an arsehole. Aemond's
a bastard and evil.
Yeah.
Twisted bastards.
Yeah, but not a literal bastard, though. And then, the Team Black side seems like they don't have the upper hand. They're not in power. Rhaenyra tries her best to do the right thing and not, hurt people. So you do start to see a transition here. She tries to reach out to Alicent early on in the series, but then that doesn't work. So then she slowly starts, any means necessary. And I think this Dragonseed scene really shows that. And I hope that this transition continues because in the books, Fire and Blood, both sides do heinous things. Both sides, it's like really not clear cut. No one's really that morally has the moral upper hand in it.
Yeah. And also, if one of the Dragonseed was like, you know what, I actually changed my mind. I want to go home now.
Yeah, she locks them in, doesn't she? Like she has the guards there and everything. And mate, they all get roasted. Even the guards she leaves down there. You do see she's struggling with the weight of her decisions as well. Like she's like, oh fuck, they're getting crisped again, just like with Sir Darkland. And great scene as well, just like watching the Bronze Fury Vermithor just like cook some, eat some, smack some, like wow. Like very, very well done. I think one of my favorite scenes. What would you say is your favorite scene in this series?
I think my favorite scene is like when Aegon goes to meet Alicent and he's kind of like, she berates him, basically saying that he's a complete utter fool.
Yes.
That he could just learn from the people who were there, pick up knowledge, and then be able to then develop and then become an actual proper king, like most young kings do. Well, young smart kings do. And he's like, but Mom, what should I do? And she's like, literally says, do nothing. literally, all you need to do, you're the figurehead. You just need to stand, look pretty. You've got wise enough people who can then make decisions for you. All you have to do is do nothing. And he was like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm going to, while drunk, go into
yeah. Then he flies out to the rest. Yeah.
And I think that's what angered. I think Aemond was fine with his brother just being the figurehead and him being the power behind it. When his brother literally went out, and I think it just flashed before his eyes, like, if he dies right now and we lose momentum, we've lost the war and all our lives are at risk. And I think also Kristen Cole thought the same thing as well. It's like, if he dies, it's like, where does the legitimacy? The legitimacy just ends.
Same issue with Rhaenyra as well.
Yeah. The thing is with Rhaenyra, because he named her his heir, technically her children can kind of still hold on to it, but because Aegon, I think he still has some children alive.
Yeah,
he does. But then they would be extremely young. So then it really wouldn't go to Aegon. It wouldn't go to Aemond. It would go to Aegon's children before it would then go to him.
Ooh.
So if Aegon dies, I think if Aegon dies, then the actual lineage will then go to his children and not to Aemond. Similar to when Viserys died, it didn't go to Daemon, it went to his daughter. So I think he also Aemond saw that in his eyes, like, I lose any form of legitimacy if this guy dies. And also, if he dies, we could lose the support.
But then he gets the regency, so
yeah,
that seems like it played quite well into Aemond's hands until, maybe one of his kids come of age. But I'm sure Aemond would make it difficult for them to actually take power away. So we'll see. So on to the final episode, episode 8. This was an interesting one. There's been a lot of criticism leveled at it, but we can come to that at the end. So it starts off with Tyrion Lannister in quite a hilarious way, trying to ally with the Greens of the Triarchy, defeating Admiral Shirako Lohar in a mud wrestling competition and impressing her, and also impregnating one of her many wives as well. I liked it. Good sense of comedic humor in it, but I felt like one thing that's sort of scratching away at is the languages and stuff. Like, he's talking to the Triarchy, but they all speak the common tongue quite well with no accents, and it's like, that's what made Game of Thrones kind of cool. You had the Dothraki language, you had Braavosi, you have all this, but High Valyrian, which they do have in this, which is good, but in the books you talk about these free cities, and their languages are, like in real life, are bastardizations of Latin, or in Game of Thrones, High Valyrian. So it's something I found a little bit disappointing. Larry's Clubfoot convinces Aegon that they should exile themselves to Braavos to wait things out. Rhaenyra finds the wild dragon in the Eyrie, which looks cool. It looks wild. It looks scary. We'll see where that goes. Grain Hightower and Kristen have a weird philosophical nihilistic discussion. Aemond, who's really pissed off with Rhaenyra, like, the Greens are in retreat here. He lays waste to Sharp Point, which we don't properly see, out of anger. So, you see the changing of the tide here. Things are swinging towards Rhaenyra now, which is quite nice. Rhaenyra, who hoped having more dragon riders would deter the conflict, declares war pretty much. You have Alicent come over in a surprise move to say hello to Rhaenyra and just say, I was wrong, I was jealous, let's be friends again and I will allow you away into King's Landing. But Rhaenyra was so smug here. You remember it early on in the series, you had Rhaenyra who visited Alicent in King's Landing just as a silent sister. Oh man, the tables have turned. You can tell Rhaenyra was feeling that. It was so funny. I love that scene. It's like, really, she had a big smug smile on her face. You see Corlys, Velaryon, finally approaching Alan of Hull, to talk about his parentage and how he's a bastard of himself. But Alan Hull rebuffs it, whilst Adam of Hull seems to be very loyal to and ready to accept the stuff. You see Ulf the White being an absolute arsehole at the dinner table, which is funny to see, in these big royal dinners, but someone should really give him a good whipping, or kill him and then find some more Dragonseed, because they're common folk. You can sacrifice them if they don't do well. What else?
You could say, but he's a. I think the best thing to do would be to just whip him into shape, because like you could then find like 6 or 7 and then them not bond with a dragon, and then all that time and effort is then wasted.
Yeah, it's risky. That's your like your game plan. Then that she has such an advantage over the Greens now, but you'll see this in the next series or series after. You know, this is where you see bringing, you know, common folk or people who aren't fully loyal or aligned to your house, or, you know, the best of folk, and making them dragon riders. Maybe not the best idea. It's like imagine giving a drunkard at the pub the nuclear launch codes. It's just like, oh dear, risky move. So we've got to talk about Daemon's vision when he touches the weirwood tree. Yeah. What do you think you saw in that vision?
I think what he sees is potentially the beginning of Game of Thrones, the TV series.
Definitely. Yeah, you do see that. You see the White Walkers and Daenerys Targaryen. I mean, that's very obvious. But what about some of the other stuff that maybe wasn't so clear? Did you read any fan theories online or anything?
No, funny, no, I didn't, because I was like, I think the main thing I was thinking was just that it's nice to have, as in it's not in the books, but it's something that helps to carry the tradition of Game of Thrones throughout the series. So then it's like, so something that can then tie, the Targaryens together. It can tie House of the Dragon with Game of Thrones if they then go further to the past. And they do like Aegon's conquest. It then ties Aegon's conquest all the way down to like the original. So I think it's a very clever way to tie everything back to the original Game of Thrones series.
I think so. And it's appealing to, you know, the fan base who, you know, the hardcore Game of Thrones fan base, especially those that watch the TV show. I guess what it won't appeal to is people that are still upset about the ending of Game of Thrones, but that's never the case. But again, this wasn't in the books. You know, the Song of Ice and Fire, you never really find out what it is in the Game of Thrones, but it's all House of the Dragon. But a TV show, you know, they allude to it, and this is where the sort of link comes of it. So having the vision was cool. But there are some, you know, you see the White Walkers in it, which is cool because they're not actually mentioned, apart from maybe at the beginning of season 1 when Jace meets Craig and Stark and they're looking up over the wall, but they don't mention the White Walkers, but weird stuff like that. So yeah, that was interesting. You also see some like a Targaryen character in it with, you know, Targaryen hair, and it's hard I didn't know who that was until I sort of looked it up. It's someone called Brynden Rivers, who is a Targaryen, a bastard of Targaryen descent, who fights in the Blackfire Rebellion. Yeah, well remembered. You know your histories, I see. Yeah, and he eventually, I didn't make this thing, I actually had to read up on it, but he fights in the Blackfire Rebellion on the Targaryen side rather than the Blackfire side. He's a great commander. Then he eventually joins the Night's Watch for some reason. I don't know if it was out of disgrace necessarily. But he becomes a Lord Commander, goes missing after being one of their best Lord Commanders for a while. And then, do you know who he is in the Game of Thrones universe? Oh, sorry, the Game of Thrones series.
Is he Maester Aemond?
No, he's the Three-Eyed Raven that Bran discovers. I know, it's strange, isn't it? It's a little bit weird because I don't remember the Three-Eyed Raven having a birthmark or a burn mark on his face, which is what the character's supposed to have. But perhaps, you know, being the Three-Eyed Raven, they somehow avoid that. But there you go. That's a character from the Game of Thrones universe in House of the Dragon. That's pretty cool.
And I think it kind of also shows the potential spin-offs that they can do. So they did show off the Blackfire Rebellion, which I think fans would really love. Also, I think one thing they do mention is like the White Walkers were defeated before. Will they ever go into that at all? Like, who was the original Azar High who defeated the White Walkers way, way back? I think they said maybe like 5,000 or 6,000 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. I don't know if they'll go that far because, I mean, seeing, Thailand and Essos, they have sort of branched out a bit, but I always felt like House of the Dragon so far was a lot more contained within a certain section of Westeros. You don't really see the North in season 1, but you do see it briefly in season 2. But again, it's all very contained, House of the Dragon. But you are right, there's going to be loads of spin-offs. I know that some that are being pitched are one about Aegon the Conqueror, one about Arya like start exploring what's to the west of Westeros. There's nothing really out there apart from a small island called the Last Light that's under the Ironman's control. But beyond that, no one really knows. So there's a lot of room. The Jon Snow one as well to do with North of the Wall. So there's lots. Trust me, they're gonna milk this series dry. And I'm glad, I love the books. I love seeing it adapted, and overall, I felt quite happy about House of Dragon season 2. So what else happens in this one? That Castellan snitches on Daemon. The Queen arrives, and Daemon actually pledges fealty to her because he's had this dream, this vision. So it's pretty cool. And I like that scene, but I don't think it's going to last for long. Maybe what if it's a bit for show, or what if Daemon changes his mind once he gets a taste of things? It's hard to tell, especially knowing in the books that he's like, that never happens. Then there's a lot of things that might be up in the air based on differences of the books. We'll see.
Yeah. But one thing I do hope is that it kind of feels like they still want to have Rhaenyra to be kind of like the good guy or the better option. And the question is, are they trying to use the vision and also like the mandate of the Targaryens to prevent the White Walkers from taking over the world as kind of like, that's why she's a good person, because she has to win because of this?
The Song of Fire and Ice, yeah.
And I really love that they go towards the books, because I think the TV show would do better if you couldn't choose between one side or the other. Like,
Me
both
too.
were then both committed such atrocities, both were literally as bad as each other. Then it would then make the series better, because then it would be hard for them people to pick. So then it would just be on specific preferences, like, oh, I really love this character, I love that character. But it's still like, people thought, okay, after season 1, they've got that out the way. Now it's going to be they're both as bad as each other. But then it still feels like at the end of season 2, that the blacks are still
the good ones,
the better option, the good ones, while the greens aren't.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where let's start talking about criticisms. The only final thing we can say about this episode is it then goes into trailer for season 3 mode, which I loved. This was a great thing I saw online, because then you just see all the different factions marching. You see the Northmen, who look bloody cool, crossing the twins. That look badass. Thailand on the boats with the Triarchy coming to break Corley's blockade, but it's like, that was a bit of a cringy CGI scene, to be honest. You have the Hightowers marching with a dragon flying over them, which isn't explained who that is, but I found out online that's Daemon, of the Greens. But again, you wouldn't know that unless you had to read the books and stuff, or you really searched online and followed some fans or confirmations from writers. Again, lazy writing. What the fuck was Otto Hightower doing in some dungeon?
Yeah.
Is that good? Is that good storytelling, keeping that secret and then just revealing it? Or is that just lazy writing? I don't know. But let's dig into the bad stuff about this series. What else have you heard?
I think, to your point, that maybe it's because they couldn't afford to have it for more episodes, that I think more episodes would have helped to then establish other characters who are actually important to the story, will also be important in season 3 and also potentially season 4 as well. And I also kind of feel like they are still trying to slow things down. So they're like, I didn't really like Alicent going to then see Rhaenyra to be like, oh,
Right.
don't give up. Because then it's like, in real life, I don't think she would have. Because she's already crossed the line. Like,
Yeah.
her son killed Rhaenyra's son. Like, isn't that line already been crossed? And I think that's what I expected, and I think several fans were expecting, that once the finale, the last episode, once that line had been crossed, all bets would be off. But it kind of feels like they wanted to keep as they would say, the gloves on for this season, but now they're not anymore. But then it's like, she's now declared war, but then they didn't kind of like, was it because she wanted to bide her time and wanted to declare war on her terms? If so, they should have shown that better in the season, that it wasn't just like, now I'm strong enough, I'm now going to declare war, that she was actually preparing and was like, you can't declare war now because we're not ready. Because she just spoke to Alicent, but now she wants to declare war. Why didn't she declare war after her son died?
Yeah, that's true. Because that was like a biggie. And that's how they present it at the end of season 1. It's like, Alicent and Rhaenyra were still, they had that big toast at the dinner table where things seemed to be healing. And then Aemond does that great to these strong boys. That was bloody hilarious. And you think things could still work out. Like, there's the sense that Alicent and Rhaenyra still were trying to restrain their sides. But then when you know Rhaenyra's child dies, you're like, oh, this is it. This is the line that's been crossed. But they spend this whole season still divvying with that. Now it's finally going to happen. But I think what you said is kind of interesting, is why now suddenly Rhaenyra will say, no, this war is still the choice, And also, like, the baby being killed at the beginning of this series, that was just, like, done. But that's so outrageous that how would Alicent even consider inviting the Blacks to win? Maybe she might, like, you might see some, like, sense of tragedy that they want to somehow, like, they have regret about, losing their friendship and being on the sides they're on. But the fact that Alicent is actually openly inviting the Blacks in and wants them to reign is quite a big choice, yeah. And it's not in the books either. Well, I don't want to talk about what's in the book, but you can guess what's going to happen. This whole backdoor thing is not in the book. There's some people that criticize that it didn't move. As you say, it was quite slow. It didn't move a lot. Like, for example, Daemon is just chilling in Harrenhal with Caraxes the whole time, just losing his mind. I actually quite like that. You saw some insight into Daemon and some inner struggles. What about you? How do you feel about that?
I did like that, and I think that was probably the best character development I saw through the season.
Yeah.
I think the way that Matt Smith acted in it was really good. But I do get their point, as if they're kind of like stalling. And I think the best example of this would be like, I know this is a different franchise, but kind of like with The Hobbit, that they split it up into 3 movies. And then so after you'd watched the second, you were like, so they are just going to leave it here. And they could have gone a lot further. But I think they are trying to kind of like slow things down. They don't want to rush things, but I think you can only slow it to a degree, because the war is the majority of the story, not what happened in season 1 or what happened in season 2. The actual fighting between the houses and them being at war is the majority of the story. But it kind of feels like for season 1, they were kind of like setting the stage for far too long.
And they're still setting the stage in season 2. It's annoying, and it falls into that formula that happened with some of the Game of Thrones series, but also just a lot of high budget series. Is the second to last episode of the season is stuff where maybe there's a cliffhanger, someone dies or something like that, and then the final episode is just like a wrap up and setting the stage for the next season. With this one, both of the final episodes were doing that, so I felt like they really sort of missed the bar a little bit there with that, and I was just frustrated to see they're following that formula. Let's set it up for next season. Like, why couldn't we end this one on a cliffhanger? Like, there's such a big fight in the last episode, or Rhaenyra lands in King's Landing after being invited by Alicent. Like, I think that would have been good, because that final episode just really felt like it was giving into that formula. Now, maybe this is what happens. You know, they can't get a big enough budget for the second season, so like now they're going to pitch to the producers or whoever has hold of the purse strings for season 3 and says, people are expecting big fights, so give us more money.
Yeah. And also, like, I was surprised that Rhaenyra waited this long to declare war, because technically, weren't they already at war? Like, as soon as, like, her son died, and the baby was murdered, and then also
fighting and battles.
Like, what was that? Like, if she had the troops, she would have then fought back against Aemond as well. And so the main point for me was, like, why is she declaring war now when technically they have been at war?
Yeah.
The way they potentially could have done it is that they fought each other, and then there was kind of like a standstill, and then she was then reigniting the fighting. But it kind of felt like they were, like, throughout the series, like, you don't really just blockade someone if you're not at war.
Yeah, exactly. You're already at war. Like, that's the most passive-aggressive move in the history of passive-aggressive moves. Like, that's not even passive-aggressive, that's just declaring war. Yeah.
Funnily enough, there was actually a point in history, at the later stages of, like, World War One, the Russian Empire basically were losing, and they were basically given these terrible terms by Germany, and also the, like, revolution was starting to happen. And funnily enough, one thing people don't realize is that the German government funded Lenin and sent him on a train to Moscow. So at this point in time, the Russian government were like, well, they've given us these terrible terms. If we don't fight them and act like the war isn't happening, maybe they'll forget, and then we can just fight. Everything will be perfect. But then actually, the Germans then invaded, and then basically defeated them, and then required, like, heavier. They asked for, like, heavier restrictions on Russia. But their idea was like, well, if we pretend there is no war, maybe they'll forget and leave us alone.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind. That's what I like to say about all my problems in life. Similar philosophy. Okay, so overall, how would you rate this season of House of Dragon, and how would you rate the first season of House of Dragon?
I would say first season I would give 8.5, and I'll give season 2. I think I'll say an 8.2. I think the reason why I put 8.2. Okay. I think the reason I'd make season 1 higher, just because it was like something more Game of Thrones. They did also explain, like, the background as well. You were able to, like, see the different houses. You were able to then see, okay, so he's a Lannister, so he must be a ancestor of this person.
Yeah.
And also especially the key points where you had, like, kind of like the one, we saw the dragons, and 2, they had, like, the different scenes, especially, like, with the hunting scene. That was perfect in season 1.
Yeah, literally, that was cool.
The king did absolutely nothing, but then was able to and everyone was like, yay, well done to the king. And I think it also gave people an idea of, like, what was life like during the Middle Ages. And I think that was like a breath of fresh air. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Because, we're kind of used to the Game of Thrones formula of people plotting and talking. It's nice to see the tourneys, but also the hunts, the brothels, the pubs, the inns, because that's part of the charm, really. And that's why maybe Lord of the Rings is popular because you see the Shire, you see the pubs, you see the kingdoms and stuff. You know, you want a bit of that, maybe a sense of adventure, which maybe House of the Dragon season 2 was somewhat missing. I think, in my opinion, I'd give House of the Dragon season 1 9 out of 10, whilst I'd give this season maybe 7 out of 10, maybe 7.5. I think there's two things here. Season 1 felt a lot more polished, and it also benefited from the juxtaposition with Rings of Power, which I don't know when Rings of Power is coming out this year, but they seem to have ensured that they have it going at the same time. So perhaps you might feel better about Rings of Power season 2. The second thing is, I think there were a lot of characters and unnecessary plots explored, and sometimes bad acting. Like, I find the character that plays Jace, sometimes he can be good acting, sometimes he can be really bad. Like, there was an episode where it was the episode just after, I think episode 5, just after Melis and the Queen That Never Was died. I didn't like that episode because I found the acting from Jace bad. I found the acting from Baylor bad. And it really sort of just like took me out of it. And I don't really like their characters, maybe because of their acting. And, you know, just scenes with them, I felt like I want to see more of Corlys Velaryon. I want to see more of Rhaenyra. I want to see more of Aegon. I want to see more of Aemond. You know, these cool people. Great acting as well. I'm not saying that's a major sticking point for me, but I think that was something that was a bit distasteful. I think there's a lot of unhappy people on the internet who are unhappy because of things that they accuse of being woke and stuff, etc. But man, it's a fantasy. Like, this isn't a historical program. You can put that stuff in there, but I think you need to get good actors and actresses, and you need to also try and stick to the law a little bit. Like, seeing more of the languages come out would have been cool in Essos, but you know, we don't really see Essos that much, and then perhaps they didn't have the budget for it. Yeah, I'm excited for season 3. I don't think this was a terrible season that some people are making it out to be, but I think there are some good sides and some downsides. So, final question for you before we wrap up. If you could be any house within this House of the Dragon series, which one would you be and why? And you can't choose Targaryen.
I would be a Martell.
Why? Because they're just chilling.
And also, they are the only ones who are able to, until we see like Game of Thrones season 8, they're the only ones who have a weapon that can kill dragons.
Dragon, yeah, the scorpion. Yeah, that's a good point.
So
actually.
I'll be just chilling there, and like anytime a dragon would come by. And I think also in the history of Game of Thrones, many of the Targaryen kings have been also wary of like putting their and stamping their authority in Dawn, because they know that they have some form of weapon to kill dragons. And I think just being in Dawn, one, it kind of separates you from the rest. And also, I would have said the Starks, because that also separates you from all of the backstabbing and intrigue. But then I couldn't deal with that cold, though. And also the fact you've got the White Walkers, you've got the Wildlings that do raids into the north. But the Dornish, like, maybe they have to deal with maybe some Iron Islander raiders from time to time. But then just like the amount of stuff in the north that you have to deal with, like mammoths, giants, White Walkers.
Yeah, and also no one's really listening to you as well. Yeah, especially when that becomes apparent about what's going on north of the wall. Yeah, those winters are so severe as well. You know, they only send down 2,000 greybeards to assist Rhaenyra because they want to save as many of them and to farm as much of the crops in preparation for winter, because so many people starve. There's some really interesting lore about the north, and like when they get involved in the south, it has to be at their convenience, because
and also the point about the greybeards also is that because it was a harsh winter, they sent their elderly to basically so that there would still be space for the youth
and
I
food.
think that was just, and food as well. So I was thinking that was actually like they literally are like, you know what, we'll go out and fight and die, so then the young can actually have space to eat and grow. And funny enough, this will be a spoiler, but like after when they arrive and after the war, because they can't go back, a lot of them just stay in the south and stay in King's Landing or stay in the Stormlands or the Crown Lands. So you've got a lot of people, which they don't really express a lot in the series, is that they are descendants of people from the north.
Yeah, the Northmen. Yeah, you see that one. We'll see that come in the next few seasons of House of the Dragon. I'd say if I had to pick a house, I would probably choose. I'd probably choose the Lannisters, mate. They're rich. Screw it. Yeah, I mean, who needs like castles and stuff, and you just pay everyone off? I will say that's probably not the safest position because they're so vulnerable to the Iron Man, which is impendingly about to happen, and they're going to get pillaged and plundered. But man, they drive around with a lion in tow with their army. I mean, that's so pointless, but damn, that's badass. So that's all we have time for. That's a wrap on House of the Dragon, or a wrap on The Boys Season 4, and a wrap on The Acolyte Season 1. Boy, was that too much on. I had to binge watch so much at times to prepare for these episodes, but hey, it was more than worth it. I just want to thank our audience. You know, we're growing, we're getting more and more with each episode, and I really want to thank our overlord Jeffrey, who does everything behind the scenes. We can't do it without either of you, the audience or Jeffrey. If we had to lose one of them, who would you lose? I think if he lost either, well, we wouldn't exist. So
we'd be screwed, yeah.
Yeah, we'd be screwed. You know, to you, our wonderful audience, give us a like, share us around, click the notification button, and if you really love us, sign up to our Patreon and send us some of those gold crowns so we can buy Castle Rock and live like kings and queens. That's all, folks. Have a lovely rest of your week.
See you, folks.
Bye-bye.